welcome to Dear Katie, the podcast that amplifies courageous voices and real stories of resilience, healing, and hope after trauma. Inspired by the many letters Katie has received over the last 20 years, each week she interviews survivors, healers, and experts to honor their stories and explore the many paths to healing and hope. Before we begin, please know, many episodes of Dear Katie cover sensitive topics related to sexual violence, trauma, and recovery. Listen with care and take the space you need to take care of yourself. Your well-being is what matters most. Now, let's join Katie and today's guest for a conversation that matters.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Dear Katie podcast. As you know, I'm Katie Kessner, your host, and I am always encouraging each and every one of you to journal. If I feel like every guest offers so many different facets of the healing journey, or how we are shaping the laws, the policies, the conversations around the globe on this topic. And, I hope that this will be a resource for each and every one of you, whether it be academically or professionally or just personally in your own healing. So I'm going to tell all of you a little bit about our amazing guest, Tania. Tania Rashid is an award-winning journalist, documentary filmmaker, educator, and story producer whose work has taken her across South Asia, Latin America, Africa, and the United States. She has reported and produced stories on gender-based violence, migration, labor, conflict, public health, and communities pushed to the margins for outlets like these impressive places: NBC News, Jazeera English, CNN International, National Geographic, PBS NewsHour, Peacock, MSNBC, and Netflix. I'm sure there's more than that. Tania holds a master's degree in journalism from Columbia University and a bachelor's degree in history from UCLA, and she teaches and mentors emerging journalists and incarcerated writers. She's currently working on a hybrid memoir. It's about survival, shame, family, desire, journalism, and what it means to finally turn the lens on her own amazing self. So we start with that, Tania. That is like already a whirlwind of news coverage and writing and mentorship. So tell us all where you started out in the world.
Yeah, so you can hear me properly, right?
You sound
good?
Great.
Cool. Perfect. I was born in Saudi Arabia, in a small town called Al-Baha. I mean, it's not so small, but it's bordering Yemen and by the Red Sea. I was born in an American hospital, and my parents are Bangladeshi. So my father was based in Saudi Arabia for work. I was conceived there. I lived there for the first 5 years of my life. And I do have memories there, to my surprise, especially memories of my mother's isolation living out there, because back then women weren't allowed to drive or vote or go anywhere in public without a male guardian. So I remember as a kid, I would just wait by the window for my dad to come home from work, because that was literally the only time that I was able to go out to the park and just have fun as a kid.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, so that's kind of like one of the big memories I have out there. And
did you have any
sure.
siblings too, or just
No,
you?
My sister was adopted way later in my life, probably when I was 13.
Okay.
But up until the age of 13, I was an only child.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's good that you can at least remember, though, being 5 in that environment and how it felt as a female. I'm sure it was a big impression. Okay. And then in 5, you moved?
Yes. So then my family moved. Well, my dad and I, all of us moved to Bangladesh because my dad had this dream to move to the United States. He was really obsessed with coming here. He had postcards of New York City, pictures of New York City and LA on his wall, on the refrigerator wall. And it was just something he always dreamed of. So when we went back to Bangladesh, he took multiple attempts to come here. He went to the embassy and finally got a full scholarship to the University of Utah to pursue chemistry. But my mother and I we had to stay behind because my dad got that scholarship. But the funny turn of events and twist of the story is my mom won an immigration lotto visa, and we were able to, like by chance, meet my father in Utah, and then we moved to Utah, I think a year after I was in Bangladesh.
And what did you describe it as? Your mom got a what? An
An
immigration?
immigration lotto visa. So it was like,
A lotto visa.
so she applied for this lottery to get immigration to go abroad, which is like highly rare. And she somehow got that lotto visa, and we were able to meet my dad. Mm-hmm.
Oh, amazing. And then he's
Mm-hmm.
at the University of Utah. Is that in Provo?
Mm-hmm. It was in Salt Lake City.
Oh, it's in Salt Lake. Okay. And then he's studying chemistry. And what is your mom doing?
Well, he was studying chemistry and also taking a bunch of odd jobs to kind of make it. And my mom was, we were all struggling. My mom didn't really speak English, neither did I. So we learned, there weren't ESL programs back then. So we learned English watching Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers. And
oh my gosh.
that was like my English teacher. And yeah, it was like really a tough start to be in a space like the only brown Muslim family and a Mormon. So it was like going from one polar part of the world, Saudi Arabia, super isolating, to, you know, Salt Lake City, Utah, which is a different type of polarizing space to be in.
Right. And were you in public school?
I was in a public school, yeah. I think it was called Beacon Heights Elementary School. Yeah.
So you're like 7 or 8 years old?
Yeah. So I was there for 3 years.
In Utah?
Mm-hmm. And then we moved to LA.
And then you went to LA. So how did that happen? So we were like 10 now and you moved to LA?
Yeah. So my dad, he was starting an internship and wanted to take the bar exam to become a pharmacist. And so the next step was either to move to LA or New York. And my dad chose LA. And yeah, we moved to North Hollywood, and we were part of this little Bangladeshi community there, which was nice. So
that does sound good.
Yeah, it was better than living in isolation. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, luckily that was when you were 10. I mean, that's right. And you were in middle school, probably.
I was about to start middle school. I was still in elementary around that time. Yeah.
Okay. And then, and that was helpful. I mean, did you feel, and you lived physically like in a neighborhood, like with Bangladeshi families, or?
Yeah, it was a bunch of Bangladeshi people, but you know, like immigrant families came with their own traumas and their own, like, you know, there's like patriarchal structures within the culture and a way a girl's supposed to be. So like there were like all these different things. Like while we were a community, there were also these societal norms that weren't necessarily healthy to be around, but it's made me who I am, so it's all good.
It made you more spunky, and right? Maybe, and then you're. We don't have to talk about the adopted sister, but that must have been, you said, when you were 13, I think. And then I guess I don't want to jump straight into your work. I kind of am curious, like how you navigated these big changes, and it was, you know, massive pendulum switch, because now LA has everything all around you, and at least a little island of a culture that you know, I guess aligned with, or maybe stopped aligning with. Like how, I guess, maybe navigate that part of your teenage years into going off to UCLA. What was like, were you around, did you have friends at school who were from other communities, or? I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm just curious. I'm curious how you navigated all this to go and become this amazing journalist.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I would say you bring up a really good point about growing up in extreme spaces. Like I grew up across different worlds, like from Saudi Arabia to Bangladesh to Utah to LA. I will say when we moved to LA in North Hollywood, it was that little community. But then once my dad passed the bar exam, we moved to like the bowels of the valley into Northridge, which is, you know,
really different.
Just like very different suburbia space. And I started middle school and high school there, and I wasn't the coolest kid. You know, I didn't know fashion or anything like that. My mom and I, like, she dressed me like a boy back when gender norms, like now it's like people can be non-binary and all these
Right.
things. But back then it was like either you're a girl or a boy. And I dressed more like a boy unintentionally. And I was, teased a little bit, bullied, and I was kind of like in the outcast circle. So I was never like part of the cool kid crowd. And I think that really influenced my, I read books on my free time. I didn't have that many friends. And I just kind of built my own world. And it was only after I got into college, I went to community college because my grades were so bad.
What?
And a community, yeah. Oh
Wait
my
for
God.
me, just back up. Hold
yeah.
thought there for a second, Tanya. I'm just, okay. So what, did you hate school? Like, did you hate your teachers? Like, I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine your grades being bad, but
Yeah, it wasn't that I hated my teachers. The program I was in was really interesting, though it was kind of a cult, which is another story for another day.
okay.
Yeah,
Like
but
a cult,
it was
like a cult of like the cliques were terrifying and
no, it's much darker and sinister than that. It was a
okay.
grooming cult. It made there was an investigative report written on my humanities magnet school. So it's a cult of groomers. Like the teachers groom the students and sexually abused a lot of them. And I
Okay.
was on the fringes of that. So that's like it's a whole other.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
But it's a
Were
gifted
you aware
humanities
of it?
program.
Yeah, were
Yeah,
you aware at the time? At the time?
I was, yeah. I mean, we didn't see it that way. We saw it as these really cool professors teaching us bell hooks and
Right. Oh my
fascinating
God.
literature. Like we're
Right.
part of this like movement. But
Yeah.
they were also grand manipulators, and a lot of people
Was it
suffered for it. There's been lawsuits against these
right?
teachers.
That's
Yeah.
fascinating and definitely another conversation. I'm just curious. So were there female teachers involved in that or were they all male?
Majority were men, but the females sadly were enablers
Yeah,
in a
that's what I
lot
was
of
gonna
it.
ask.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now you're in community college,
Yeah,
and we've
I went to community college.
escaped the cult.
I've escaped
Um,
the cult. Yes.
and then
And
what are you studying when you start?
so in community college, I, was literally starting from scratch, and I decided to pursue history as a major because I just found it really fascinating to study the past. And I had some really amazing instructors, and I feel like over there I was like free of the cult, and I was able to just be myself. And I made some really great friends, and I was in community college for about 3.5 years, and then I transferred to UCLA. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And do you feel like I just outgrew this place and I want to go to a bigger school, or I want more? Yeah. What was the impetus for the switch?
Well, when you're in community college, a lot of people just stay there for like 10, 20 years. And I didn't want to be that. I had dreams. I wanted to become somebody. So
Okay.
I like had a counselor who helped me. It was a whole process, and it was very competitive and tough. So I had to like take specific courses and do really well in them. And there was this whole thing I had to do to get my associate's degree, which then made me qualify, and not just get my associates, but get really good grades, which then helped me transition into getting into UCLA.
Perfect. So. Which is I don't know. You hear good things about UCLA, but now I'm like worried you're going to tell me, and there was another cult.
No, UCLA was amazing. It was one of the most amazing experiences. Yeah.
Okay.
I loved being there. I didn't want to leave. Yeah.
Okay. And you graduated in history?
I studied history and global studies at UCLA.
And global.
Yeah.
Okay. Which makes sense. Is there, and while you were studying, how do you think that prepared you for all this upcoming, you didn't know you were going to do all these things, but what do you think was helpful while you were in college that prepared you for some of these adventures you would take in writing and speaking? And
I would say at UCLA, I honestly didn't know what I wanted to do, but you know, like if we were to unpack like my past, like beyond like just like the step by step going to school and all that, like I come
Mhm.
like the Bangladeshi culture itself is like deeply patriarchal. So my grandmother, for instance, was married off one of my grandmothers when she was 9 years old.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
and so child marriage, sexual violence against women, there's a lot of things that happen in my family history where my mom would give me these subtle messages of don't we want you to be empowered, don't become like your grandma where she had 12 kids and got married. So yeah, we want you to be independent, we want you to be educated. There was this narrative that I grew up with of not to be those things.
Was that
But then
from
there's
your
also a
was that
no, go
from your
ahead.
mom, that narrative only, or from your
Well,
dad too?
well, my dad was also into me getting a proper education. Education was like the main, like, of that generation of Bangladeshi families, like having your child be properly educated was the number one thing. But what went hand in hand with that was also to be a good daughter and to get married super young, even
Right.
if
That's
I'm not
why
a child bride, and have kids.
right,
So
right.
it was like dual pressure to be like super successful, but then also like a really good subservient wife that has children for the family. So I
Right.
was
So
grappling with both things
that's why I wanted to know,
growing.
like, how was your mom willing to, like, I can't imagine, like, how do I embrace or release myself from my cultural, my
Mm.
background? Or do I think I can change it? Or do you write and do all this work to, I'm just curious because this is a massive tension, right? To navigate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And between your
attention.
parents, right? Like I'm just thinking you have the culture, you have you know, your own grandma. And how do
Hmm.
you honor her and not make her feel like her life was a train wreck because she didn't have any choice, perhaps? And who do
Yeah.
you support as a rebel on your side? That, or are you reforming? Right. So there's reform, reject, navigate.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking all the words of like how you've gone about this duality in your life.
Yeah. Those are all great questions. I feel
It's
like
kind of one big, massive mess of a question.
it's huge. Yeah. It's a lot to unpack. I would just say like, for me, I wanted to be all the things. Like, I wanted to be a good daughter and I wanted to be super successful. I wanted to do everything. And, like, that is just like impossible as a human being. But I
Mm-hmm.
tried. And in trying that, I had really lost myself. So,
Mm.
um,
What does that mean to you when
well,
you say
my
that?
parents had partly arranged my marriage. Like, I met this guy and I was in the middle of, figuring myself out. It was during my UCLA days, and there was this obsession with marrying me off while I was simultaneously getting my education. So to appease my parents, like I knew the guy for 3 months, and within a year, I was married to him. And the
What?
marriage was not, yeah, and it was not healthy at all. Like there were a lot of red flags. Like he had a lot of issues. I think he has undiagnosed bipolar disease. And so there was a lot of like rage and unhealthy things that I had to deal with. And in some ways, there's this voicelessness that my grandmother faced that I was facing, being even while being an American Bangladeshi girl. Like the same cultural, even though my mom had told me, don't be this, don't do that, be independent, she was still instilling this cultural norm of being obedient to your husband and being in this like thing because that's what women do. And I endured that marriage for 5 years, and eventually I like couldn't take it anymore. And I told him to get anger management counseling, and he refused and divorced me, which was the biggest blessing in my life. And I would say that catapulted my rage with what happened to the women in my family and rage with what happened to me to really investigate and unpack what like, gender-based violence across the world. So it started with my own story and then my own background. So I moved to Bangladesh, and everyone thought I was insane. They're like, "What is she doing?" And I
Wait, when
moved
you
back.
moved, right? When, like, because you did go, just fill me in on one thing. So you're married
Mhm.
after 3 months, you meet the guy, you get married within a year, you stay with
Mhm.
him 5 years.
Mhm.
So now you've finished your master's.
Yes.
Okay, so you snuck
Good
that in while you're
good
married. I'm just
perspective.
trying to make sure I
Yeah.
stay on track here. You snuck in the
Yeah,
master's
no, very
degree.
perceptive. Yeah.
Okay, then
Yeah.
you're going through this roller coaster with this bipolar, and you say, go get anger management. And would you classify that relationship as abusive? You said
Yes.
unhealthy. Did it?
Yes.
So,
It was very abusive. Yeah.
like, in
It was an
all the
abusive.
ways, just degrading you verbally, physically, like what? I mean, whatever you want to
Yeah,
share.
there were physical moments where I felt
Mm,
unsafe, for sure.
mm.
Yeah.
Oh
It was
gosh.
just a bad situation.
And he
And
was found
I
by your,
kept going.
yeah,
Hmm?
you kept trying. Well, I just
I kept
wanted,
trying.
yeah,
Hmm.
and he was found, identified, and like put forward by your parents.
Well, partially, my cousin introduced me to him. So I was
Hmm.
sort of dating him on my own. But once my family got involved, it became
Hmm.
this whole thing. We need to marry her off. She needs to get
Oh
married
gosh.
tomorrow. Like, let's do it.
Wow.
When's the wedding?
And you were about 22 or 3 when you
I
got
was in
married?
my early 20s. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, now I got a better picture, Tanya. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure I got that.
No, it's all
Um,
good.
it's
It's a
okay.
lot.
And then,
It's a
no,
lot of
it's
information.
great. It's great. And then I like how, so immediately after divorce, you went right to Bangladesh.
Well, oddly enough, after our marriage was already on off the rails, and I went to Colombia partly because I wanted to take space from him, and I thought the distance. Well, it was my dream to go to Colombia, but it was also like some space might help him, and he can figure himself out, and then that kind of thing. And then when I finished Colombia, his whole thing was, well, are you going to move back with the family with us? Because he hadn't finished school and
Mm.
he wanted me to help him finish school. And then I was like, what did I go to Colombia for? To move back with your family and to help you, like the obedient wife thing, right?
Mm.
And I said, no, I want to move to Bangladesh. And then he was like, are you insane? What are you doing? Like, we've been apart for all this time, and now you're just leaving all over again. And I think it was just, that was my way of coping. And he came with me for a little bit, but he hated it there. And he had to finish
Had he
school, so
ever
he was
lived
like,
there? Had he ever lived
no,
there? No.
no, no. But he's half Bengali
Oh, okay.
and half French Canadian. Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. So you're there, and what are you doing while you're in Bangladesh?
While I'm there, well, I had just graduated from Columbia, gotten my master's in documentary and broadcast journalism. So my dream was, again, it's like so funny when I think back on it, because I'm writing my memoir right now, and
I
just like
know. That's why I'm
unpacking the
asking all these
layers.
questions.
Yeah, yeah, and just like it was like I want to speak, for the voiceless, give voice to the voiceless, tell stories that are not being reported by mainstream media. It was this like conviction that I moved in with. But I only had a degree. I had no experience. I was cold calling all these networks. I was calling NBC, ABC, Al Jazeera, saying, hey, I'm this Columbia grad on the ground. If you need a journalist here, it's an underreported area. I know the language. I know the culture. I'm here. And so that's what I was doing. I was like pretty much broke and like trying to make a name for myself.
That's
And then the
super
right
smart,
place.
though. That's super smart.
Yeah.
Pound the
Yeah.
pavement
I
when,
mean, on the
yeah,
pavement. Yeah. On boots on the ground, as they say.
yeah, that
And
was
yeah.
brilliant.
And so then, I was broke. I was just like getting by, eating ramen and sleeping in this room the size of a closet with these
Right.
Australian expat girls working for a nonprofit. Anyways, long story short, I was at the right place at the right time. There was a giant factory collapse that happened. It's called Rana Plaza. garment factory workers were mostly young girls making clothes for big brands like Walmart, among other Western big brand names. And they're getting paid, what, $1 a day. But they got crushed by the garment factory. So the garment factory had collapsed and killed over 1,000 young girls. At the time, they didn't have, like, the journalist they had in mind was blacklisted by the government. So then Al Jazeera called me and they were like, Tania, we need you there. And that was my big break. And I had reported on that story for a month. Yeah. So I was writing articles, shooting
that's
videos.
what I was going to ask you. I wanted to know, like, you reported on it. Were you like doing interviews? Were you interviewing people? Were you on camera?
I was doing video news packages. Yeah, all of it. I was doing all of it. That was my biggest big break.
Great.
Yeah.
This is so lucky. I'm like, okay, now what do we do? So then, yeah, because Tania, I know, like for our listeners, like, I hope you realize, listeners, like, I'm so lucky I get to talk to everyone, but it's like my whole life was an accident. Like, I was going to be a chemical engineer, Japanese double major. So please, so please, like, I think it's so important.
I want to know about you. I want to know your story.
It's very fun. It's like, that's why I'm so rambunctious. Like, but everything's about making, it's like pound the pavement, go, if you want to make change, you have to figure it out, which is always like knowing your history. I want to know, I always think it's so good to know where, like, you snapped and how you dug around with conflict of, like, emotional, like, big time conflict. Like, I think it's so important when, for our listeners, like, if you are struggling with, like, my abuser is my best friend's father, or, like, you can't divorce your family, but you can choose a different road, or you can struggle. And I think Tania is a really, we're talking about it, but how do you struggle in a way that's healthy-ish, because you can't fix everything in a day. And obviously, Tania's been at this for a long time, and we still have plenty of misogyny and oppression. So there's still tons to do, but micro movements are great. So let's be terribly sad for the factory disaster, but very glad that it opened the door and that you walked right into it. So how was it connections that you made as a result, or the quality, were people just like noticing how brilliant you were, or did someone say, oh, she doesn't look too bad on camera? I hate to say that. I was like, no, it's like, seriously, like, I'm 18, I'm not a fashion model, and yet they put me on the cover of Time magazine. And so,
wow.
So
like, I read about that.
Right. So it's like, why me? Like, or why did I get
What was
selected?
that like for you, though? Like, to be
18 years old. I was,
dude.
Yeah, it was awesome. It wasn't, I didn't even know. It was just like one thing after another, do another, let's try this. What else can I do? Tell me how I do that. Like, I would get, I was helping write federal laws, and it was all good. I was 18, but I'm still doing this stuff. So back to you, Tania.
That's intense. I feel like we have a lot in common in some ways. We do.
Yeah. It's like we struggle, because I was like supposed to do what you did, but it was even, the 50s mom that I had that was like the quintessential stay-at-home who could cook like 12 courses, and the FBI dad. And so everything, it was like, men do this, men carry guns, and men fight wars, and men are firemen, and women like make great food and have kids. So I disappointed on all the ends. I don't cook. But anyway, I think that's what I think is so fascinating, is like, I want our listeners to know, right? Just, you have to persevere. And I guess I think also what I heard you say a little bit, Tania, was like this abusive bad husband situation. You did a smart thing, and you got away from him. Like, I think it's like you didn't, it was getting hotter in the fry pan, and instead of just jumping out, you jumped into another pan of your own, right? So you left.
Yes, exactly.
You're like, I'm not going to stay in your hot pan. I'm going to go like cook my own
make my
dinner.
own mess.
Right. Make my own mess. But I think that's a strategy that you used, right? It was just a different strategy. It was a smart one, because it allowed you to get a graduate degree and then go be bold and go to where you were raised for a moment. Okay, so now let's like talk a little bit more about your choice of reporting and writing and how you went from that. And then was it happen chance, or did you still pound the pavement and go seek and say, or would you write things and say, can you take this on? Like, this is a good idea. Like, how did you navigate becoming more prolific and published and recognized?
So I did the Rana Plaza thing, and my whole thing was video journalism, so news documentaries. So I was really fascinated by the visual medium. And so shortly after that, I was approached by Vice Media. It was kind of like back then, like the cool kids of journalism doing gonzo style journalism, being embedded and immersed in stories. And I had all these stories, these pitches that were just sitting inside of me that I wanted to release into the world. And no one was taking my pitches. It was just like rejection after rejection after rejection. And then finally I had like an on-screen camera test with Vice. They tested me out for this piece on the Bangladesh elections. I did pretty well. The piece did really well. And so then I was able to pitch and get these stories approved that I've been dying to do. One on gang rape in Bangladesh and another on sex, drugs, and slavery in South Asia's largest mega brothel. So these were 25-minute documentary pieces that I was on camera and produced with the whole crew.
How did you get a crew?
Well, Vice hired.
They gave it to you. Oh,
yeah,
good.
well, they gave me that.
Vice approved the ideas on the one on gang rape, like 2, and then they gave you a crew and you could produce 2.
And I had a budget, and it was done right. And I also have.
And what year was this? When was this?
This was 2015. I want to say. Okay. 2016.
Yep, like a little more than 10 years ago. And you're still in Bangladesh. Yeah, it's a long time. Okay. So and you're in Bangladesh still, right?
I'm still in Bangladesh, but then, then doors start to open, and Vice on HBO wants to talk to me. And then I moved back to New York. And then I'm having these big meetings with the big honchos. And then they put me on as a on-camera correspondent for Vice on HBO. And I do a story in India. So then I start branching off. And I do a story on India's sanitation crisis. And then before I know it, I'm off to Africa. Then I'm like working for National Geographic Channel on illegal gold mines. So then I'm working for Channel 4.
Yeah, one project after another.
One after another, and then I'm just
and it was more
on
like
the road.
they would. So it sounds like they would just hear, like someone would be in a room saying, "Who's good? Who could do this?" And they like Tania comes to mind. So they keep hiring you for. Was there any continuity to the themes? Like you just said, sanitation. So was it anything dirty? I'm just thinking like gang rape is not exactly the most pretty to touch. So you got the ones that no one else wanted to do, you think? Or,
No,
I don't know.
really deeply wanted to do the gang rape story because
you did, but maybe nobody else did.
Yeah, probably not. I'm interested in the things probably other people wouldn't want to do. Yeah.
Well, that's helpful.
Or
not comfortable doing.
Interesting. Yeah. Right. But I was comfortable. Those spaces is where I thrived. I found most comfort in spaces that were most uncomfortable.
Right. Right. That's how I think about you. And you had already done that. Look back. That was how you started your life. You were in the uncomfortable places and navigating them since you were born. So this is nothing new. Now you're just doing it in, adult life.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my analysis, at least.
No, it's a very interesting analysis. Yeah. It'll be helpful for my memoir. Thank you.
Oh, you're quite welcome. You can give me credit. No, that's how my brain is very, always very analytical, that. So it helps me to learn the more you tell me. But then I'm curious, was it still feeling like journalism is a very male-dominated world, or were you starting to see any rising stars with women, and did that shapeshift what was allowable to be covered or payworthy? right?
Yeah. So I think it was back then very male dominated. And like, especially for me, like going to war zones, places of high conflict, it's often men like banging their chests with their bravado, like, look at me, I was on the front line type of thing. And for
Wait,
me, as
Tanya,
the,
that's such a stereotype. I think, like for our listeners, if you could just go back in time and look at some of the TV, the newscasters in these,
yeah,
like coming from war torn somewhere, and the guy
yeah,
is, it's like put G.I. Joe or Ken
yeah,
doll, like just move them around. They always have the same like safari outfit and the same like half scrub.
yeah,
You are so right. But it's like just
yeah. And
move
it's
the guy
pretty,
around.
very accurate. It's like a lot of them. And I like, those were my male colleagues, like having to deal with that type of, fragile male
Right.
ego, navigating that while also trying to develop my career.
Very
But I
difficult.
feel like my strengths that were something that they were overseeing and lacking is one, I speak different languages. And also, I'm a woman, so there's spaces these GI Joe dudes can't go into and get, you know, this nuanced perspective because they're so obsessed with getting whatever they want to get. So
Mhm.
I would just kind of slip into, like a village hut where there's these women that haven't talked to anybody. And then I go in and then I get this really rich story because I just take a breath and I'm like, I'm not out here pounding my chest showing people I'm on the front line. I'm more like, I want to hear about from the people who are not getting a chance to speak.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think that was so smart to navigate into those spaces. Did you find, I don't know how many different countries I introduced you and you had like the whole globe is on there.
Yeah,
Were
I've
there
been
any,
to many, many countries.
when you think
Yeah.
about, I guess I have two more, I know we don't have that much more time, but two more questions when we
Sure,
are
sure,
thinking
sure.
about gender-based violence. For you doing this work of helping us, all of us hear from kind of the front lines about gender-based violence globally, where are you finding the most hopefulness and then the most like frustration that things are going to take a very long time to change? And I only say that myself just for context to Tanya. Is like I went to speak in South Korea last year, and then I went to twice now to Kenya, to Nairobi, to work with trafficked girls in the slums and try and help support and build a business from nothing, right? No education, nothing, like twins when they're 11. And then another twins when they're 13. Like it's tough. And then India, just a smidge of work. And, my perspective is limited and I wasn't reporting. I was like trying to do change, right? Like do education and do empowerment on the ground and not necessarily thinking about reporting upon it. But so you're going, observing, taking in, having conversations and sharing out the picture you garner. And so I guess my going back to like most hopeful and least hopeful, because your perspective is built from a different lens. So where are we, and what would you identify in those like hopefulness and why? Like, is it the economy is better? Is this education more accessible? Is the healthcare like more for women better? Like, what are the things that you see as most encouraging if we could deploy them, have them available, that shapeshift and maneuver around religious beliefs or cultural barriers for women? Like, what do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, I think it's incredibly important to see the work that you're doing, going into these spaces that, like you're working with women in Nairobi that have been trafficked. Like, that's just really important work. Like, first, I want to acknowledge that. So, I think it's women supporting each other, women showing up for each other, women empowering and uplifting each other that I've noticed. For instance, when I was working on the gang rape story, I was talking to a nonprofit called Blast, and it's a bunch of female lawyers, female social workers who work with women who have faced extreme sexual violence. And they also work in the brothels in Bangladesh with sex workers. So to see that spirit of coming together and wanting to change things is incredibly inspiring, especially reporting on such grim subjects. And for me, different from you, like you go in and you're trying to help. For me, I'm bearing witness. So I'm not necessarily going in to change anything, which is very hard. Like I'm going in to show the world this is what's happening and this is not okay. Like what can be done to change this? Like I'm merely going in asking a question and hoping for resolve and for like some sort of, change in policy, like you've done, like me change in policy, enacting laws that make things different. The challenge, that's the good things I see. The challenges I see ahead, like for instance, if I go back to Bangladesh, young girls are being raped and killed and beheaded by men. Young girls, like 8 or 9 years old, almost every day I'm reading a report on a young girl walking home from school being lured by a man that takes her, rapes her, dumps her body in a ditch. And to me, that's just, it's really sad, it's really scary, and it makes me think about the men. And part of the resolve in healing with all of this is healing our men and having conversations and changing this, I don't know what's going on in there, and like trying to really get male allies who see and want the change to happen as well, not just within the women, is what comes up for me.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that about the men. There's a book by a woman who's no longer here. Her name was Sherry Tepper, an author, and she wrote a book called The Gate to Woman's Country. And it was a book about breeding the violence out of men surreptitiously. It was one of my favorites I read. And like when I was in college, I think there was like 2 women's studies programs ever in the country. And I was like the second to graduate in women's studies, and it wasn't gender-based studies back then. But I think to your point, I would recommend that book to anyone. She's a science fiction writer. She was, I should say, past tense, but very creative in how she envisioned solutions to big problems.
That's
And they speak to, your writing a little bit, because she took problems that you're identifying, whether it be violence or, environmental or like any problem in the world. And she would develop an approach through an envisioned way in a community or a space to deal with it, and point out all the foibles of different approaches and hubris and how we think we can solve things. But nonetheless, I think I am excited for reading more about your work, and obviously your memoir, surely, Tania, will be brilliant. And I hope our listeners will take from our conversation just like your perseverance, your steadiness. You come across as so clear-minded and steady.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, just really steady and able to take, the mayhem of, the world or things around you and sit with it rather than get stymied or angry. It's just navigate through it and figure out what to do. And I think doing the observation is a really it suits you. Like, it's not that it's not just because it takes a steady hand to stay calm and get those conversations to happen with vulnerable people, having, tried myself, but not to report upon, but just to even, like, everything starts with open and honesty and the brutality of reality, right?
Yeah.
So when you start with
all of it, sitting with all of it, which I'm sure you do too in your line of work. It's sitting with the mess.
Sitting with the mess and then not trying to unravel it. It's just trying to first understand all the pieces and don't try and put them in a place. You start to figure out which ones are the most delicate and the most vulnerable, and navigate through it. But I think writing and journalism, like what you're doing, is so needed. And I feel like you're holding such a special place, and you've got so much more to write. So I can't wait.
Thank you so much.
See you on another piece of the globe and exposing more of what we need to know about, and getting people to pay attention to things that they don't want to think about. And it's a privilege to look the other way. Quite honestly, it is a privilege.
Yeah.
And just going to church or faith group and saying, like, pray for all the people is just not going to change that. Go. You need to go see the stuff. Don't just give it up to somebody else. Like, go.
100%.
I encourage everyone
and that's
to go
what you're doing, and that's what you're doing in your work, which is super inspiring.
Well,
or you have historically.
Always, I keep doing the work. But I think, it's just, and for our listeners, like, it was me going from town to town on a Greyhound bus, like trying to, tell my story, but hear everyone else's story and figure out in rural Montana and, historically Black college in Alabama, whatever it was, like everywhere. We need to go everywhere. So if you haven't been everywhere, there are Greyhound buses still. But anyway, Tania, I'm so delighted that we had this conversation, and we will all pay attention to when your book comes out. In the meantime, I think, where could people go and see some of your work? Is it on YouTube? Are there you mentioned Netflix. I mentioned Netflix when I read your bio. Where could they see more of your work?
You just go to my website, www.taniarashid.com, my full name.com.
Okay,
you can see them there.
And
you can go to my Instagram.
Yeah. Okay.
Everything's on my website.
Okay, that sounds perfect. Well, thank you so much for being on the show,
Thanks
Tania.
So much.
So delightful.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. And for our listeners, remember I said get that journal back out. Please continue on. We will see you again in another week, and go back and listen to any episode that you think has, now we're on 300 plus. So there's got to be something in that treasure trove of conversations that will help you get to the next space that you need to go to as a survivor or a supporter. So take care and see you again next week.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Dear Katie. These conversations are never easy, but they're always necessary, and we're so grateful you chose to share this space with us. If something in today's episode stirred something within you, please give yourself what you need. Whether that's rest, support, or just a deep breath, you're not alone. To hear more stories, resources, and survivor-centered conversations, be sure to subscribe and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. We want to hear from you, so please leave us a review and share your feedback. Your thoughts help us create episodes that resonate with listeners. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.